welcome to another installment of Fail Forward Friday. I am Malesela Molepo, and yes, my CEO is still not here. He's jet setting somewhere out there in the world of Limpopo. But yeah, man, thank you everyone for tuning in again. We are here as always to do one thing and one thing only, is to tell people that you can fail, but you can fail forward. Remember how the whole how it works is that I bring a story. Usually, Doc brings a story, and we then talk about these stories of failures or blunders that other businesses or entrepreneurs have done. And what ends up happening in that is that we are able to actually learn from these, so that many other people as well can learn from these mistakes. So today I'm actually with a guest. A guy I just met on the street. Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. After all of that, okay. Is this what podcasting is?
That's what podcasting is.
Is this Gen Z now? We're in the future. Cool. I'm Ricardo. Mali met me on the street about half an hour ago. He said, "You have a story?" I said, "Yeah, sure, fine. I can find one on ChatGPT." No, so I'm Ricardo. Mali and I have been friends for a very long time. And I don't know, I'm here to tell you a story today.
Yeah. So before you go, obviously telling us a story, tell us your background. What do you do?
Yeah, so, okay, I work full-time in a warehouse and distribution company.
Yeah.
We sell basically sweets, biscuits, packaging, things like that all over Limpopo.
All right.
Mainly logistics. So we pack and load trucks. We deliver one case all over, 300-kilometer radius.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. It's not very glamorous.
Yeah.
We load trucks for a living. And that's it.
You're a truck hauler.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it.
So, okay, but obviously you're here because of business in that same sense, and you are very interested in business. In fact, this very, trucking business is a business that you guys own.
Yeah.
But you obviously come out of a business in the past.
Yeah.
You learned a lot from that business.
Yeah.
Failed forward as well. So it's not, whatever we're about to talk here is not someone that just is from the streets that obviously just does, I heard this story. But it's actually business that maybe you have either went through, or you actually you have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And that's why you're able to come here and say, listen, there's people that blunder. I've blundered obviously, but actually there's bigger blunders out there, and come learn about them.
Yeah, so pretty much that's it. All right. So I was the business that I work in now. I was in and out of the business, when in my younger days.
Yeah.
It's a family business. So I started off. I would go in and I was loading trucks, helping supervise the floor, manage the floor, things like that.
Yeah.
After that, going to study.
Yeah.
And then coming back from studying, then I went into business for myself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the blundering experience comes from.
Yes.
Right? So, the business that I was in, we started a car wash and panel beater all in one. It's the only one that was in Polokwane.
Yeah.
It's still around.
Yeah.
We started it, myself and my partner at the time.
Yeah.
And learned a lot of lessons. We ran it for about 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Sold the business. And the owner now is running it, seems to be quite successfully.
Yes.
Happy for him. But we learned a lot of lessons along the way. It's a fail forward type of a situation, right? We started it, we did the land, the building, worked with the landlord, did everything, working on the rent, the employees, the efficiency of the business, the processes in an industry that I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
I learned that whole thing from scratch while we were...
You're building the plane while it was flying.
100%. That building was coming up and I was looking at that and I was like, I don't know how to paint cars. So that was the experience. But you know what? We learned on the fly.
Yes.
And I'm proud to say that I think we ran it relatively successfully for...
Yeah, listen, 2 years.
No, we pushed it.
Funny enough, this was during COVID. So half of that would not even be in your...
So it was kind of during COVID. It came up. We were actually supposed to start before COVID.
Yes.
And then COVID hit.
Yes.
And that put us on the back foot.
Yes.
And, that meant that there was no construction happening.
Yes.
There was no sourcing of machinery. Nothing of that sort was happening.
Yeah.
So we started basically shortly after COVID, or when lockdown was starting to ease up a little bit.
Yeah.
People were starting to reopen, business was back to normal, but we were still wearing masks, etc.
Yeah.
And we ran that thing for roughly 2 years until eventually selling the business.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Cool, man. Maybe let's go into the story, obviously, that you have for us, because I'm dying. You didn't even tell me what the story is about, so it's actually quite interesting.
I'm excited for this. Okay, so you guys, I like the podcast.
Yeah.
I listen
Thank
to
you.
the podcast.
Thank you. Must be dark.
Yeah, 100%. So, and in fact, my favorite one I was listening to today on the way when I was on the N1 on the way, and it's the introverts. We had Tebogo on the podcast.
Yes.
That thing, and she was spot on.
Yes.
Everything you guys were discussing was 100% true.
Yes.
Right?
So, sorry, on that podcast, I just felt like it was just introverts telling everyone else how great they are.
Yeah, pretty much. Listen, we don't get a lot of chance in the spotlight, eh? So when
Wait, are you telling me you're an introvert?
Do you not know that?
Oh, okay, my bad.
we don't get our chance in the spotlight. So when there's a podcast where there's 2 introverts and 1 extrovert, then you must take your back seat. So anyway, and I really enjoyed it. That was my favorite one now. So where I was going with that is to say that you guys talk about a lot of interesting things.
Yes.
You guys talk about a lot of important things.
Yes.
But you guys like to focus on innovation, on tech, on cars, on these. Today, I want us to talk about something truly important.
Okay, what is this?
Today, I'm going to tell you the story of Lego.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see what Lego did.
Okay,
How did they fail forward?
Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Lego.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to start at the start.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning. We're going to start before any of this ever existed. So, Lego was started by a guy named, I'm going to butcher some of these names, but we'll call him Christensen.
Okay.
Because it's a Danish name. Lego is a Danish company.
Yes.
So, the Danish words are difficult. Anyway, it was started by Christensen. We're going to go back to 1924.
Yep.
Okay. When he was a carpenter, him and his 2 sons.
Mm.
He had a carpentry workshop in Denmark, and he was just doing whatever. He was doing whatever, I don't know, what do you make trees out of wood? Make trees.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
He was doing something with wood.
Yeah, he's playing with wood.
So that was around 1924, okay? He's doing that business. It's going relatively well. He's making a successful business, but not massive. His workshop and his house were sort of on the same property.
Yeah, which is probably what happened, obviously, back in the days. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they were next to each other, right? And so that's eventually, we're looking around 1930. I think it was about 1932. There was an accident with a glue gun, and the whole place burns down.
Oh, hectic.
His house, his workshop, everything, right? So I'm giving you this background to show you the person and the family behind the story.
Okay.
Everything burns down. They had to rebuild. So obviously he's a carpenter.
They rebuild for themselves.
He rebuild. He rebuilds quite quickly, and but he builds it bigger and better than it ever was before. So expands. He wants to expand the business. He wants to do more carpentry projects. And in a clever move, what he did was he actually, while he rebuilt, he was adding flats.
Okay.
So that him and his sons would stay in the flats in the workshop.
Yeah.
Right? In one of the flats in the workshop. He would rent out the other flats. Because when everything burnt down, he had to get a mortgage. Take loans. He had to take out of his savings. He had to do all kinds of things like that to get to refund his life.
Yeah.
And so he started renting out the flats to sort of fund the mortgage. So it was a clever little move on his part. Right?
Yeah.
Now we move on to about the 1930s. Now it's the Great Depression.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so what is he going to do in the Great Depression? So he starts he's still doing carpentry, but he's diversifying.
Okay.
And he starts making wood toys.
Yeah.
Because, what cures depression more like...
like a toy.
Like putting a wooden horse on wheels,
Okay.
So he does that and he starts diversifying. He comes up with the name Lego.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, sure. This is a podcast after all. So he comes up with the name Lego, which in Danish, I'm going to butcher it as well, it's pronounced in a similar way. It's something like leggot or leggo. And it means...
let go.
No, leg go.
Oh.
And it means play well.
Okay.
So that's how he comes up with the name. They patent the name, they do all those things. Guess what happens? The factory burns down again.
Oh my gosh. How does the factory keep on burning down?
The first time it was apparently
The
an issue
glue
with
gun.
the glue gun.
Yeah.
The second time, I think it was an electrical shortage.
Okay.
And then, so anyway, but now we're looking at, close to the 1940s somewhere
Yeah,
there.
and he has a mortgage on that.
I don't know if the mortgage is paid off at that time, but it's possible.
Okay.
But anyway, because he was making a profitable business, and he was quite successful, and he had people renting from him. The bank was able to loan him
more
funds.
money. Yeah.
You know, this is at a time where the banks, if you had a relationship with the banker,
Yes.
you could go to the banker,
And they just give it to you. They don't have to.
and they'll just show us your financials, show us your everything. Okay, cool, we trust you, it's fine. And
Yeah.
we know you as a person.
Yeah.
Whereas now that doesn't necessarily happen as much. You need a massive business and things turning for the bank to look at you.
Sure.
That's why private investment is such a huge thing these days.
Yes.
Anyway, rebuilds everything. During this time, he's experimenting with, a little bit with plastics. And around 1940, let me check here, I think it was 1946, there was an innovation in plastic injection molding.
Okay.
And he buys his first plastic injection machine. And so now they're experimenting with how are we going to turn this into toys. The toy market is growing. We're building the wood toys.
Yeah.
We're making more and more money doing the wood toys. We want to expand. Okay? So, but wood is obviously costly.
Yeah.
Plastic is becoming more and more affordable. So he wants to expand and he wants to do
Plastic,
this with plastic now. And so he buys his first machine and they realize, okay, so wood is actually for steak. Plastic is for toys.
Yeah.
And so they start working on that. Then eventually they come up with a design of the Lego brick.
Okay.
So this is now late 1940s. The first ones they sold came in a tin. One of these flip open tins. It was just a collection of different color bricks.
Okay.
Quite expensive. But it took off like crazy. Kids loved it. Okay. So they carry on from there. They patent the design of, that the proper Lego brick design with the studs and the tube at the bottom so it connects properly together. They patent that design. That's why you don't really see that design anywhere else. So that's sort of the beginning of the story. That's how these guys, everything was going well.
Yeah.
Besides, obviously, the factories burning down, but they were making it through those factories burning down. It didn't seem like much of a hindrance for him, right? That could have seemed like the failure to start, but it wasn't necessarily the failure to start.
The craziest part now you're saying is these guys were failing, obviously, with the... I'm guessing they're learning over time, right? With the glue gun, with electrical failures, whatever. And I'm thinking, flip, these guys are failing. But if there's something bigger than your whole factory burning down,
that's not even
crazy.
the story.
Okay, let's get into
That's the background to the story.
Yeah.
Right? The failing actually happened in our lifetime, even though I think you might even not know about it. I only learned about it recently.
Okay.
The failing happened around the year 2000.
All right.
2003. We're going to get to that. So anyway, now the company's growing. It's growing strength to strength, etc. Over the years, they're adding more. They're diversifying a little bit. Okay, so they start Legoland theme parks.
Yes.
The first one opened in Denmark.
Okay.
Then they opened another one. I think it was in California. It was then another one. So they're opening, they're expanding. They're looking at merchandising. So shirts. Things that have the Lego brand on.
Yeah.
Different types of, different types of toys, but that aren't necessarily Lego bricks. Anyway, they're diversifying a lot, and the business is growing at an incredible rate. Little fun facts: by the early 1980s, late 1970s, early 1980s, Lego company was growing at a rate of roughly almost 100% per annum.
What?
For a couple of years.
These kids are a lot,
not for like 20 years. Yeah. Not for like
decades.
20 years, but it was like, no.
Oh.
I'm saying for a couple of years, but not for decades.
Okay.
Because, can you imagine the size of this thing if it was 100% per annum, doubling in size for decades, but it was doubling in size every couple of years.
Yeah.
So by around 1980, they estimate 70% of children in the world had some form of Lego in their house.
70% in the world?
70% of children in the world had some form of Lego that they
Can I ask, what made Lego so good? What makes Lego so good, actually?
It's because the only limit is your imagination.
Okay.
And
was that their selling point?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Everything else, any other toy that you see
has a function already.
It's a thing. This glass you cannot open your imagination up to this glass.
Yes.
The glass is meant to be a container for water.
Sure.
Another toy that is, let's say, an action figure is meant to be an action figure.
Yes.
Lego was bricks.
So Lego was the building blocks,
Lego
literally,
is the building blocks
of anything that you can imagine.
Lego was the building blocks. So that you were limited by your imagination, and that's actually how they sold it, because the first sets, like I said, that they started selling would come in a tin, and it was just purely bricks. It was like 2x4 different color bricks. The normal standard Lego brick that you see.
Yeah, the 3 with the 2 as well, with the block as well.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And so kids would be making houses and entire little towns and things like that out of that. So the scope was enormous.
Yeah.
eventually they started adding lines. Then, while they were growing at such a phenomenal rate, they started adding specialized lines. So those are now the Lego sets that you see in the market. Okay.
Okay. So they basically show templatized.
They're templatized.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to expand on that. But basically, what it was at first in-house was a couple of decent like sort of engineering type guys that would come up with a set, and they would say we could build this. A lot of them were primitive at first, but they would say we could build this type of thing, like let's say a car instead of a house, out of this set. But we need these pieces to make it happen.
Yeah.
So now Lego obviously had to add lines. They had to add machines that would make different molds, different colors, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Until it got to the point where they had roughly 12,000 different pieces that they were making on a regular basis, that they were manufacturing. Or around the 1980s, they were one of the top 10 biggest manufacturers of anything in the world.
Okay, sure.
This is a family-owned company.
Toy company. Yeah.
Till today, the ownership split of Lego, I think it's called Lego Group, is 75% owned by the Christensen family.
Okay.
And 25% owned by the foundation started by the Christensen family.
So they own everything.
So it's 100% owned by the Christensen family. But what's cool about that, just as a side note, is they set up the foundation to...
So that they never come out of the family.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what IKEA did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
So
you.
then that's what happens. Every time there's a dividend split.
All these guys from these European countries, they never want... But IKEA is from Denmark as well, right?
Sweden. Is it not Sweden?
I think it's Sweden, yeah.
I think it's Sweden.
Yes, maybe then it's all these guys from that side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's pretty much the background. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the story.
Okay.
We're looking at the late 1980s, early 1990s.
Yeah.
Now technology, computers are becoming a proper thing.
Yeah.
And now there's software that's starting to help them develop sets, so that they can use. They're using the software to develop new sets. They're not having a couple of people in a room to say we can make this type of car, that type of car. We need this machine. Now it's software doing it.
Yeah.
Streamlines the whole process, makes it a lot better. But in that same process, what they started doing was they started to overreach.
Okay.
They got a little bit overconfident. They saw massive potential.
Yeah.
And they started adding more and more and more and more until the point where they added so much that they weren't matching what they added to the demand for the product.
So they were just over producing basically.
Overproducing.
Without having enough sales to.
Yes.
So throughput was not big enough for the input that was coming into the inventory.
Yes.
Okay.
So they kept doing that. On top of that, in the 1990s, now we're going to get to essentially what was the start of the fall of Lego Group.
Yeah.
Until they got to the point where they were facing bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more potential. They kept adding more and more theme parks. 1999 was when Star Wars came out. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.
Okay.
They started doing licensing deals. That's why you see Star Wars Lego sets, you see Harry Potter Lego sets, you see things like that. So they started doing licensing deals. What that did for them was it boosted their revenue.
Yeah.
Which was an amazing thing, but it distorted the figures. So when you have those licensing deals, they had the deal with Star Wars, and when the movie came out, a lot of the people were buying the set, which gave them, what was it? It was like an extra $1 point something billion of revenue just in that year.
Okay.
And it distorted the figures because now obviously all the numbers are inflated.
Yes. Oh, so it looked like they're making so much money.
Yes.
But on the other hand, they actually still are in a deficit because of all the other overproduction.
100%. 100%. So they kept adding lines and expanding, and eventually it got to the point where they had overreached so much. The CEO at the time was the grandson of the original founder because it stayed in the family. And he actually said in an interview once, he said, it was around 1993 that we started seeing a little bit of a decline in sales.
Yeah.
And, the numbers weren't looking so good, but we kind of ignored it because, market cycles and things like that. So we kind of ignored it and we kept investing as if nothing was wrong.
Happening. Yeah.
So part of the problem here is that all of these different revenue streams were being sort of clumped into one. And it's like we were actually discussing it the other day.
Yes.
It was blurring the lines.
Yes. Because what ends up happening is So a product that is not profitable looks like it's profitable
100%.
because the one that's very profitable is actually carrying the weight of this other one. And the problem is when that profitable one stops being profitable, then everything is now you caught with your pants on your ankles.
And if you don't recognize it in time,
Yeah.
like you say, you're caught with your pants on your ankles, it could be a little bit too late. And that's kind of what happened in the late 1990s. So let's go specifically into what was happening, okay? In 1999, so this is what the figures were, right? So in 1999, the Lego's first film tie-in, which was Star Wars, came out, right? And it doubled sales for that year.
Wait, Lego film?
Lego's first film tie-in, which was the Star Wars release.
Oh, so they released a Lego Star Wars?
No, they released Lego sets for Star Wars because that was in 1999.
Okay, I get you.
And it doubled sales for that year.
Yeah.
Okay, Harry Potter was around 2001. They kept adding costs. So the more costly new ventures that they added, right? So I've got here Legoland theme parks. They opened an in-house video game studio.
Yeah.
For Lego video games.
Okay.
Which still today is actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
They're selling, I don't know.
Games.
Yeah, games. There are plenty Lego games.
Okay.
Plenty Lego games.
Okay, well,
targeted at children. Targeted at children, but it's funny. There's actually a term called AFL. AFL. It's an acronym. It stands for Adult Fans of Legos.
And you part of that AFL guy.
I may or may not be an AFL. Why do you think I brought this story?
Listen, when you first see him talking about Lego, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Here we go.
He's gonna tell me everything about Lego. Who's Lego's father?
Okay. Darth Vader. So, where was I?
No, where were you?
Eventually, these guys had added. I mentioned that they had added 12,000 lines.
Okay,
right?
of manufacturing lines.
So it's
different
12,000
products.
different pieces.
My goodness.
Different pieces. Imagine 12,000 different
And you have
pieces.
to, I'm guessing with all the manufacturing, obviously, you have to make sure that very piece is made for that very...
Yep.
That's
So
crazy.
each and every single piece has to be made to spec. It has to be
In its
made
own
in
production
different-
line, yeah.
In its own production line. Not necessarily in its own production line, because what they would do is they would rotate out production lines. But
yes.
can you imagine the management need?
Yeah. To make sure that because for every blue,
Yeah.
you need a red, and for
Yeah.
every block, you need a what you call this, a rectangle.
Yes. And for each and everything, you need a different mold. And
Yes.
And now you need to be producing thousands at a time.
How do you even keep up with that?
So this
and
became
at the
an
time, I mean, I can even imagine back then, like computers were there, but they weren't like what they are now. Processing wasn't like big, or you couldn't get a computer to just do all of that for you.
Yeah, 100%. So that became the first big problem. But no one really saw the red flags.
Okay.
You would think in hindsight that these types of things make sense, but they were making
Obviously.
money because the theme parks were bringing in money.
Yes.
Even though the theme parks were actually costing them a lot of money. At some point, I think it was around 2003, let me make sure, they were about $800 million in debt. They were burning roughly 1 million euros a day.
A day.
They were bleeding 1 million euros a day.
Yeah.
So this is now where we really get into the downfall. So that was around in 2002. They didn't realize it because, remember I said the CEO looked at it around 1993?
Yes.
He said, okay, look, sales were not looking good.
And then 10 years later, and he still was
only
like
10 years
oblivious.
later, he said, we're going to keep reinvesting as if, we did reinvest as if nothing was happening, thinking market cycles and it'll come back. And, we're still making money, etc., etc. 2002, net sales were very, very good. Lego turned over roughly $1.7 billion for the year.
2002.
2002.
And they were still bleeding.
They were bleeding. But they didn't realize it.
But okay, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's bring accounting into this.
Yeah.
What accounting says, when you account for everything, there's money in versus money out.
Yeah.
How do you not see that money out is more than 1.2 billion?
So this is where the blunder comes in.
Okay.
Because what you're saying is 100% right. It's easy for us to say that in hindsight. We know that's how it should work.
Yeah.
Why these guys didn't see it, that we don't know. They were bleeding a million a day. But because there was 1 billion coming in, at the end of the year. I mean, if you're bleeding $1 million a day, and there's $1 billion coming in throughout the year, you see what I'm saying. So if there's $1 million a day, multiply that by 365.
Yeah, it's 300 million.
365 million that you have to,
But
that you have to service.
in is just revenue, it's not profit.
Exactly.
Yes, okay.
So now where the losses are coming in is not being accounted for is in the production lines.
Yeah.
Right. On top of that, some of the money that is coming in needs to go to servicing debt for the theme parks.
Yes.
That they built too many in too short a time
Yes,
frame.
and the thing is there's theme parks, you still have to do operations on that. You
Operations
still have,
on
costs.
all of that.
Yeah.
Now the big blunder here is what happened is it was just the rapid expansion without enough, you said accounting.
Yeah.
Rapid expansion, not enough accounting, not enough separating revenue streams from expenses.
Yeah.
And seeing what exactly, and that's actually how we're going to get to one of the remedies. You'll see it later.
Okay.
Identifying exactly what is making money, what is not making money.
Yes.
And how do we fix this?
Yes. How do we fix the one that's not making money?
In 2003, this is where it catches you with your pants down because, like I said, in 2002, sales were incredible.
Yeah, billion, yeah.
In 2003, sales was down almost 30%. So now, when you lose 30% of $1 billion, you're down 300 and something million.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money to lose.
Yeah.
That's more than your
In 1
operating
year.
expenses.
In one year.
In one single year. So what it took was, that year was actually a wake-up call. Imagine if that year hadn't happened. That's what I thought of when I was looking into this, right? Imagine if that year hadn't happened and sales were only down about 5%.
Yeah.
We would have had another situation like 1993 where they look at it and they go, sales are a little bit down.
Yeah. Everything still looks fine.
But everything still looks fine. It's just a bad year.
Actually, you reminded me of how, that there's that movie, The Big Short, on how the 2008 financial crisis happened, and how there's a line in that movie where the guys are like, "How did you find this?" He said, "We looked."
Yeah, we looked.
That's literally
like,
most of the
hello.
time. And it's actually crazy to even think like this, right? But it really is. The guy looked at the books. He said, how many people are defaulting on their mortgage payments, and how many people are actually, or how many other bonds are actually being paid? The one outweighs another, and the problem with what's happening is that what's going to end up happening is eventually this is all going to implode, because someone has to take the brunt for the money that is defaulted. Now, if you have more than 50% of people defaulting on their mortgages, what do you think is going to happen? I'm not saying it was 50%. And I'm guessing that's a similar thing here, is that it needed that 30%. Lucky for them, it needed only 30% for them to realize, whoa, we actually are, nothing's happening here.
Yeah.
Because if it had gone worse, or if it was still a bit good, it could have, the can could have been kicked along the way into the next year.
Yeah. So we never know what could have possibly happened with that, but that was essentially a wake-up call for these guys. And then they looked into it. What they did was, at the time, the grandson of the founder was the CEO of the company.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I would put this, I thought about this, right? I don't even think I would put this on incompetence.
Okay.
Because it takes a certain amount of competence and courage to expand and to do the amount of things that this guy was doing. Remember, this is a family-owned company.
Yeah.
So it's not like he had this massive board of directors saying, okay, you're responsible for sales, you're responsible for construction, you're responsible for this, and then, we'll come together. No, this guy, they were running it as a family.
But don't you think that's, and obviously, this is actually quite interesting because you obviously come from a family business as well. Don't you think that's actually quite interesting, to say the least? The reason I'm saying that is external parties always give you perspective sometimes.
But external parties don't have the same skin in the game.
That's what I'm saying. It's one versus the other, because I do agree external parties don't have the skin in the game. There's many things you can actually bring this to as well. External parties don't have the skin in the game, but at the same time, external parties know that they're working for something instead of it's for us. You know what I mean? And also the vision, maybe.
Right, and you know what, to your point, now that I think about it, external parties will bring a different perspective.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily care about the outcome, but they're striving for a successful outcome because that's what supports them.
Yeah.
So okay, maybe.
Because I'm thinking, look, and I'm not saying that it's. I think it's just a when you in it's how can I put it? This is actually a bad example, but when you're in a place for so long with everything just being familiar, do you not think you then become comfortable enough to say, it will always be like this?
Maybe complacent a little
complacent,
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying that as well is I remember reading or I was listening to a podcast actually on LVMH, and we did an episode a few weeks back on LVMH and how the two families blundered big time on that. But in that podcast, they actually were speaking around how at some stage Bernard Arnault tried to buy what's this? He wants it. Bernard Arnault's probably sweet dreams is having every single luxury brand under his care, right? And one of those luxury brands was Hermes. Now Hermes is a family-owned business. In fact, they've always been a family-owned business. What they're doing is they're doing great numbers, like great numbers because it's a family business.
Right.
Now the problem that these guys actually had was that they came to a place where 14% of the share was in the public market. It was 23 or 40. No, it's 23. And Bernard Arnault tried to buy. In fact, no, not tried. By 2014, starting in 2008, he had bought out every single public market share so that he can be on the board, so that he can come in the board and maybe shake things up so that he can get more shares and take over.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, what I'm trying to get to here is
he was a strategist.
He's of note. Like, listen, that guy.
Unbelievable strategist.
Yes, it's actually crazy.
I say was. He still is.
He is. It's actually crazy. But the reason I'm saying all of this, right, is I'm guessing why Hermes did what they did. First of all, was probably obviously to get more funds to grow the business. Go into the public market with 23% of shares. You don't risk losing the whole company because the whole company, most of the 75% of that share, 75% of the share takes preference over any decision. So they were still able to do that. But maybe the 23% was them saying, listen, we want to play out in the public market for the money, but also for perspective as well. Because us being in one bubble could cause us thinking one way and us becoming arrogant enough to think we know it all.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. In fact, it makes a lot of sense because of how these guys fix the scenario anyway.
Okay.
So you're right, because that outside perspective also brings accountability.
Yes.
Because now there are more people with skin in the game. There are different people with skin in the game. Okay. But that raises another point in my mind, is because the way that these guys fixed the scenario was they brought in a new CEO.
Okay, outside CEO.
An outside CEO. I don't actually know if he was part of the family. He's got a whole different name, whole different surname.
Yeah.
I can look into if he was part of the family or not, but he was not a Christensen.
Okay.
So he wasn't one of the brothers or one of the grandsons or whatever, but they brought in a different CEO.
When is this?
This is 2004.
Okay.
Because in 2003 was the rough year. So now financial year in 2003, these guys realized, listen, we're down.
Yeah.
Big time. We have 800 million in debt.
Yeah.
We're servicing these theme parks. We're producing 12,000 different types of bricks, meaning we have to run small batches at a time at high cost. And every time we have to run it, there's downtime because we have to clean the machines and change the colors and do all kinds of things.
Yes.
So this guy came in and he said, right, guys, we've blundered. See what I did there?
Yeah.
We've lost our way.
Yeah.
We are, get this, a Lego brick company.
And that's the vision.
That was the vision.
Yes.
We've strayed from the vision.
Yes.
We were confident because we were expanding and we were doing incredible things, which is what everyone wants to do. But we need to come back to our core. We need to find our heart again.
Yes.
So he employed a couple of different tactics, right?
He actually wasn't part of the family.
Did you Google it now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's it.
Yeah.
Completely outside perspective.
Yes.
So what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, he was incentivized
Yes,
to come in and fix the
obviously,
scenario.
yeah.
But regardless, I have a lot of respect for individuals. On a side note, that come in and can take authority and control.
Bull by the horns.
Take
and
the
say,
bull by
listen,
the horns.
this is why we're going to do this,
Yes.
and we're doing it
In
turn
something
around.
that is not even inherently, it's not his family business.
Yeah. In fact, he's probably never been at another company that does Lego, because Lego's the only one.
It's possible.
You know what I mean? Like he probably didn't come from maybe it's manufacturing, yes,
No,
but
probably manufacturing. But okay, but you're right, because Lego had the patents. Lego is Lego.
yes,
Lego expanded into other things like Duplo, and they tried other forms of toys and other little dudes.
yes.
A lot of them failed. The one that was successful, I don't know if you remember Bionicle.
I'm guessing anything that does mechanics inside.
So
and
Bionicle was they look kind of like Transformers, little Transformers,
then, with the trucks,
and you would build them out of Legos, right?
Okay.
So they were cool, like robot-looking
Okay.
characters. That one did extremely well. For whatever reason, maybe the marketing was good, maybe it was attractive.
Yes.
It actually was one of the contributing factors to this blunder, because those sales also inflated everything.
Yeah,
And they weren't
yeah.
separating the costs.
Yeah.
And those pieces, all the different lines, the Bionicle was one of them, but there were about 4 or 5 other different types of, little toy things that they tried to expand into that all required more complex pieces.
Yeah.
And all of them just added to the costs, and only one of I think it was about 5, only one of the 5 was successful, which was Bionicle, which means 4 out of the 5 were failures.
Yeah.
So this is a whole series of failed decisions.
Yeah.
Done from a good place, because we're expanding, we're doing new things, we're really working, and we want to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was a quote that I saw which ties this all together very nicely, which is that sometimes the best innovation is knowing what not to build.
Yes. Yeah. Saying no is basically the best thing that
no.
would have happened to someone.
Saying
yes.
no. I had exactly that same conversation with the gentleman I went to see today that I told you about in his factory.
Yeah.
And we were in the car, and he said to me, I asked him, because he added a whole separate business to his factory.
Yes.
And I said to him, but this must have taken a lot of your time. And he said, oh, it was incredible. I said, yeah, because obviously you had to step away from the
main
core of from
where
what
you
made
started.
you.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, 100%. But you know what? Sometimes when you say yes to one thing, you have to say no to another.
something else. 100%.
He said to me, as I'm talking to you now, if a phone call comes in, I cannot take the phone call and talk to you. I have to stop talking to you to take the phone call. So what was happening here was everything was happening at once.
Yes. There wasn't focus.
There wasn't focus. Now, in some cases, this is possible, but what you do is then you separate the focus.
Yeah.
You don't. We're not all focusing on the same
thing.
on 17
Man,
things together.
So
you see what I'm
I
saying?
get exactly what you mean. There's I think I've spoken to you about this before. There is a theory by Bain and Company that was done, a study that was done by Bain and Company, and they came up with a theory called and it's exactly actually what happened there. But it was the theory's name was the founder's mentality. So long story cut short, I think I have spoken about it on the podcast. I'm not sure, but the founder's mentality says when a founder finds a company, they're out to solve or be very agile, no bureaucracy, they're out to actually solve a problem. They're out to make things good, make their visions clear and build a vision, right? What ends up happening is the company grows. Now, in Bain and Company's terms, they grow when a company grows fast. Now, in this sense, obviously, they didn't grow as fast. I mean, they've grown since the 20s or 30s.
Yeah, it's an 80-year-old company.
Yeah. So they'd been growing, that's fair, but that grew at the end of the day. Now, in Bain and Company, they mention how the founder loses perspective of what they were tackling the first time when they went into that business. And what ends up happening is a whole lot of bureaucracy comes in, a whole lot of confusion comes in, a whole lot of complexities come into the organization. There's no focus where they do everything And what ends up happening is the people that built the actual company leave and professionals come in. And because professionals come in and professionals have not necessarily been able to build something, they've taken over because these professionals come from what? Other corporates. Now, what ends up happening is, again, those complexities then kill the company over time. Now, in this sense, it's not as so. The big thing in this sense is that the similarities around here is that then there came a CEO that didn't necessarily have the vision. They understood the vision, but they expanded on top of the vision, and they were the lines were blurred in that vision, as we were speaking about earlier on. And then because they were blurred and they thought, listen, we can take over the world, we're making billions. And I mean, billions in the 90s was still a lot of money. It's not like billions now, everyone is making $1 billion. Not to say that but everyone is making $1 billion.
Now.
You know what I mean? Like every second company's turnover is $1 billion.
All new startups are $1 billion startups.
You know what I'm saying? But now back then, you think, oh, everything is going well. So much so that you actually think that you're on top of things. Meaning that you lose that vision. And because you're losing the vision, you're actually losing a hold of everything that you actually need to do. And then you start again focusing a whole lot of stuff, and which was what happened. And when the new CEO came in, he was like, yo, calm down. Let's stick to what we know. Let's actually take all the hate, shuffle and stuff out. Let's stick with what we said we're going to start with, and let's build on that. Everything then builds on top of that. And even then, when something else comes out, like if there's a breakaway business, the breakaway business does its own thing.
100%.
It does not fall under. Again, you don't take accounting from the theme parks and blur it with the Lego blocks. They have nothing to do with each other except the name.
100%.
You know what I mean? And that is, I guess, something that people actually should watch out for. Is that understand what the vision is, still be focused even if you diversify, but diversify under the very thing that you said you're going to start with, and make sure that thing is a success before you try go any other places where you're going to blur the lines as well.
100%. So that ties into one of my personal blunders. When I was doing the business that I spoke about earlier, there were a lot of cases where our initial intention, funny enough, was we knew that. We actually knew this section is this section.
Yes.
That must make money for that section. This section is now what happens if this section is struggling?
You're gonna
pull.
Yeah.
Why? Because the business must survive.
Yeah.
We need to survive.
Yeah.
So you're gonna pull.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing.
No.
But let's account for it. Let's make sure that this section is not suffering because there's a problem in this section.
Yes.
And that we're financing it from the other section. Yes. Because it means that this section where we're financing it from is a profitable business.
Yes.
This one is not.
Funny enough, we spoke about that because if you were to start two different businesses at the time, that one business that was making profit was actually business. It was. Cash flow was good.
Cash flow was good. If I had separated the two and not had the overheads of having them all together, there would have been one that was a failure, and there would have been one that was profitable.
Yeah.
And who knows, till today I could have been running the profitable.
Funny enough, you say that.
It's
actually,
possible.
You know what, man? I actually went to a business that does something similar with you guys. I say something similar. It was actually the exact same business you guys bought into.
Okay.
But one of the branches.
I know how that business works.
Yeah, exactly. And I went into one of the branches, and the guy, and it makes perfect sense what you're saying now, because I spoke to the guy, tried to understand why like their business runs the same way, like why this business, you know? And the guy was actually telling me, because the car wash side, he was saying they actually don't even focus on car washes as well. In fact, the car wash side for them, whilst with you guys obviously it was different, the other way around. The car wash side of theirs was so busy that they could not afford to do the car wash side. I mean, not the car wash. The car wash side, not car wash side. The panel beating side was so busy for them that they could not afford to do the car wash side because the panel beaters were they needed more space to do that, because they had all the car guys around. So they're in the middle of all these car brands, and all these car brands come to them and bring business to them. Right. And he told me straight that if they were to do the margins with the car washes, he feels that they would lose all the other side, because their focus will be gone away from the big panel beating and everything else. And I mean that business outside was just cars that were damaged that they were fixing up.
Right.
But on the car wash side, there were one, and he says no, he does favors as car washers. They still have the car wash because they need to wash the very car that they were fixing. But they were not doing it from a place of two different businesses.
Yes.
And now that you say that, it actually makes sense to say that, and focus actually is then a big thing in the sense, right? To say in your business, actually know what you're doing, be able to bring focus to to whatever organization, account for everything basically.
Yeah, account for everything. So that was a main thing, and so that's essentially how Lego ended up in this position. So obviously there's a happy ending to the story.
Yes.
Because here we are, and you walk into my flat and you can see some Star Wars Lego sets.
Not only
right?
that.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a happy ending to the story, right? There was also the Lego movie not too long ago, which grossed, I think it was $460 billion.
There's more. It's two Lego movies. How many?
Well, I know. I'm talking about the first one.
Okay. Yes.
It was 468 million box office.
Yes.
Now that's box office.
Yes. And the next one, I think it grossed more. I think.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. Then that's interesting. So now, sort of failures aside, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
Right? They bring in the new CEO. He says, okay, guys, we need to get back to our core. We know what we're good at. We have all of these separate sides to the business. Some of them are actually quite good, and we need to maintain them, like the licensing deals, like with Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, these things like that. Those things make good money every time there's hype around.
Yes. They sell themselves, basically.
They sell themselves. We need to keep that. But then we make that a specialized item.
Yes.
So Lego started changing. This is actually a little bit further in, so it's a little bit off topic, but eventually they started changing into two different sides. They've got the smaller retail sides, which is kids' toys.
Yeah.
Buy the small, cheap sets for the kids, because what they're going to do is they're going to build it, break it down, put all the blocks into a little storage, and then build something else the next day.
Yeah.
Whereas the adult side is collectibles.
Yeah.
Those are premium products.
Yeah.
So those are now sets where there are 9,000 pieces in one set. So there's still quite a lot of pieces that need to be manufactured.
Yes.
But here's an interesting strategy they do with that. Lego sets have a lifespan.
Yeah.
So every time they bring out a new set, call it the Millennium Falcon for Star Wars, they run it in their production facility for 2-3 years, discontinue it.
Yeah, they don't come back to it. Yeah.
They don't come back
to it. It's a limited edition in that sense.
Yeah, it's a limited edition, and there's a few of them. There's quite a few limited editions. So most of the specialty sets are now all limited editions. They run them in batches.
Yes.
And then they won't bring anything like that again for the next whatever
that's actually
years.
very clever, because on the second-hand market, it actually
It spikes.
it's actually a different market that they just opened up totally, because
there are people making a living
Yes.
buying the Lego sets that are running in batches now, knowing that they're going to sell them at, I don't know, 9-10 times the price
that they bought
in
it at.
3-4 years.
Yeah.
To people who didn't buy it at the time.
And that actually ends up helping the actual Lego himself.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It raises the value of those things.
Yes, it raises the value of your whole market.
It raises the awareness.
Yes.
Lego, I forgot to mention, in the 90s also started opening their first chains, their first branches.
Shops,
you know, like the actual
Lego
brick
shop.
and mortar, like Lego shops. Those ended up being a massive, massive cash cow for them. That was not one of their losses. That was not one of their failures. The first one was
because
opened.
the core actually still worked then.
Yes. The first one was opened in Sydney, Australia.
Oh, wow. Why Australia?
Who knows why Australia? it should have actually been in Denmark.
Yeah, but that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. The first one opened in Australia. It could have just been that, if I'm using logic, it's probably because Australia is a difficult place to ship to from that from that side of the world.
So the warehousing was there, and might as well sell out of the warehouse.
Because that's what they did with America when they expanded to America. What they did was they licensed a company called Samsonite in 1960 something. I've got it somewhere here. But 1960, I think it was 66. And Samsonite rented machines from Lego Denmark.
Yeah.
So those specialized machines that they had now customized over time to specifically cater for those toys.
Yeah.
Samsonite had the license, rented the machines from Lego, which was bringing in more income to Denmark.
Yeah.
Right. And then they produced locally in America and Colorado. It was called Lego by Samsonite. And that produced and fed the entire Lego of
In America, yeah.
So that's how they spread to America. I would assume the moving to Australia is because we're
same.
manufacturing all of this
Yeah.
in Australia. Let's put a central location in Sydney.
Yes.
And we'll probably warehouse everything that we need there, and we'll
Yes.
keep our stock float
Yes.
just at a certain level there.
Yes.
Anyway, how do we fix the scenario? New CEO comes in. He says, right, guys, we're going to slim down. This is what we're going to do. Number one, remember I told you they were manufacturing 12,000
Yes.
different types of bricks. He
Yeah.
slimmed that down by half.
Okay.
Massive, massive cut.
Yeah.
You can imagine what were the changes in manufacturing, in management, in organization that needs to happen.
Yes.
Cuts it in half. Some of the ones that he couldn't really cut, he outsourced to a different company. Some of the smaller lines that they couldn't afford to really lose, but was costing them too much to manufacture locally.
Yes.
They sold all 4 theme parks.
Oh wow.
Sold them straight before building new theme parks. The theme parks were losing them money big time.
Yeah.
Here's the main one, right? And this sounds like logic, and this is what comes back to the accounting.
Yes.
The statement here says, every new set must make money. Believe it or not. Every new Lego set has to make profit.
Yeah.
That should have been the thought
The first thing, yeah.
from the get-go. It's like,
Yeah.
what is it in manufacturing? Look, we can all talk about this from, like, as if we know more than them. But
Yeah.
in manufacturing, if I produce this thing, what does this thing cost me? What am I selling it for?
Yeah.
In my costings, I should have everything. I should have my operational expenses, my overheads, my
Yes.
raw material costs, all of
Yes.
that. Sell it at a profit. By default, I should be making money.
Yes.
That wasn't happening, and they only introduced that in around 2003. Those are the main ways. Okay, slim down, sell the debt, basically the theme parks,
Yeah.
and bring back the focus. I'll give you one guess how long it took them to turn this thing around, and this to me is one of the most amazing parts.
What?
How long it took them to turn Lego from
Yeah.
800 million in debt,
Yeah.
bleeding €1 million a day,
Yeah.
facing bankruptcy,
Yeah.
a lot of mistakes, a lot of blunders.
Yeah.
It took them only 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
From 800 million.
From 800 million in debt.
And that's basically what focus can bring.
That's what focus can bring.
Hectic.
That's all it took them. They had to
That's
get rid of
crazy.
the debt, the massive thing, the massive debt that they were servicing. They just slimmed down the company, focused on what they were doing, brought it back to their core.
Yeah.
It only took 2 years. It must have been a stressful 2 years.
I'll give them that. Because they probably, selling off a theme park. How do you even start off by selling off a theme park?
100%. Who's buying theme parks?
You know what I mean?
How do you find that buyer? Today they have 10 theme parks all over the world.
But you had to
But
go
it took-
down
It took
to go up.
getting rid of them
Yes.
to rebuild them.
Yes. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Because you need focus. In fact,
Yeah.
again, I'll come back to this Bain and Company, and maybe we can end up on this. One thing that they actually mentioned is that one of the questions was, why is it that these mega companies like your Apples and everything did not go through the same thing? Because they grew fast. They do Google and all of these things. And the main thing was focus. Everything is like, every part of what they did is they brought focus to everything they did. So when they did the Macintosh, they were focused on the Macintosh. When they did the Apple phone, the iPhone, they were focused on the iPhone. Like they had when the other thing ran itself, they started with something else. And you think about it now, obviously they have tons of executives in Apple, but you never really see Apple just bringing out everything all at the same time. They'll make something special and they'll bring it out. Maybe in the year they'll bring out 2, but you'll never hear them saying there's 10 products that Apple brought out brand new. You know what I mean? And maybe your Googles as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they are R&D things that is happening, but ultimately all of them are actually focused in whatever. They have its own CEO running that aspect of the business as well.
Yep.
So it's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I wanna add one more point.
Yeah.
Right.
You actually, before you add one more point, at that point, and then give me your takeaway.
Okay.
Around this whole story when you obviously researched and everything else.
So the last point that I want to add is actually, it's specifically to contradict a lot of what is talked about on podcasts like this.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you talk about, like you say, the innovations, Apple doesn't release X amount of product. They've got R&D. Things happen systematically
Yes.
and controlled.
Yes.
Right? very often we talk about these massive companies, these tech companies that start releasing products that you didn't know you wanted.
Yes.
Which in the beginning is what Lego was.
Yeah.
Right? It was a new idea of a toy that people didn't know. They didn't have it before.
Yeah. I mean, because it didn't exist before that.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the ways they brought it back to their core was they started crowdsourcing ideas. And that is a thing that I don't think we talk about enough. Because everyone is trying to innovate before the other guy.
Yes.
They're trying to figure out what is the thing that people don't know they want so that we can sell them. And then they'll realize and then we make incredible money.
Yeah.
Lego said, let's bring it back to normal. Let's ask our customers
what they want.
Because
Which is what basically business is, problem solving.
100%. So they started sitting with a backlog of all these sets that they had come up with over the years and they are not selling.
Yeah.
So can you imagine the inventory you're holding that's
Yes.
basically money sitting in a warehouse?
Yes.
So all they did was every time they would open a new store, they would hold a big fan event.
Yeah.
And they would have, polls and competitions and
Yes.
things like that. And fans would tell them, we want you to release this set.
Yes.
They would give them ideas. And then the top voted ones would make it into production.
Makes sense.
One way to pretty much
That's
guarantee
that people are going to come by.
that whatever you're producing.
Yeah. We want a house and everyone then.
So we make you a house.
Yeah. Okay.
100%.
That's
So
fair.
and it was, to me, that was a very smart thing that I don't think we talk about enough. I
So
think
what's your takeaway?
my takeaway is expansion is good. Don't lose your focus.
Yes.
Don't get greedy.
Yes.
Don't look at all the different things you can do. And funny enough, that one sentence that was said to me today really hit home, and it brings it all into perspective. Sometimes in order to say yes
You have to say
to
no to
something,
something else.
you have to say no to something else. It doesn't mean you're saying no to everything. It doesn't mean you're losing anything.
Yes.
But you're focusing on building this thing. Therefore, you cannot build that thing.
Yeah.
Do what your focus is. Do what you are here to do.
Yeah.
Don't do the other things that are cool but occupy your time.
Yes.
Build massive what you can.
Yeah.
That's my
fair.
takeaway.
Okay, well, with that said, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Ricardo,
Thanks.
It's a good story.
Yeah. Thanks
I
for
hope
having
you enjoyed it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I didn't like you being here. I'm joking. But yeah, thank you very much for everyone that tuned in to this episode. Again, like, subscribe, comment. I mean, this is a pretty good story. What else would you want us to talk about? What other stories do you know about that you want us to tackle on this episode? Maybe we could even invite you to tell the story. So yeah, thank you everyone. And tune in for the next episode of Fail Forward Friday as we learn to fail forward. Thank you.